Okay, all right. So just to recap, we've been speaking about prayer. How prayer is really not prayer in Judaism, because prayer means that we are offering words to a separate entity. Prayer in Judaism is tefillah, which means connection. Remember that? Because we are really becoming one with God when we pray. Idea number two was that prayer also is a combination of two very opposite elements. One is the structure of prayer, which comes from sacrifices. That's why we pray. Prayer today substitutes sacrifices in many ways. And sacrifices were rituals that were very structured, that had their times of the day, that had the specific laws attached to them, etc. But on the other hand, the other element of prayer is that which comes from the soul. It's more spontaneous, it's more pure, it's holier, comes from the soul, so it's holier. Now, our prayer today, our tefillah, really combines the two. There needs to be a soul, as the Talmud states, Rahman aliba ba'eh, God wants the heart. But if we rely on the heart only, there may be times where we just don't feel like praying, right? Emotions are a wild world. There'll be times where I just won't be in the mood. And therefore, we need a structure to create this consistency, which is key in Judaism. As Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say, and I've said this many times, that if we had to condense the message of Judaism into one word, then it's the word consistency. And that's what this structure really creates. Now, we also spoke of the go for it, Gila. Institutionalization of prayer. Thank you. Institutionalization of prayer. Thank you. Which,
not the longest word in English language.
right? Okay, fine. So it's a long word, not the longest. You want to tell us the longest word?
Long ago, I knew it was anti-establishmentarianism.
Oh, okay.
My work.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. All right. But the institutionalization of prayer, if I'm saying it right, really speaks of this idea that prayer has its historic influence. And I'm saying that because prayer really has grown over the ages. It was a very small book. The Siddur, the prayer book, is a very small book after the temple. And it's grown over the years. It had tremendous growth, specifically during the years of the school of Kabbalah in Tzfat in the 1600s. They added many, many, many prayers. Shabbat prayers and weekday prayers and holiday prayers too. So it's grown over the times. And now the growth of the prayer is not necessarily something that is negative. It might make the prayer longer. But on the other hand, also it refers to this Kabbalistic idea that there are many different gates in heaven. And the prayers really, especially the prayers that were added, provide us with the tools to open those gates, or to be more specific, to provide us the keys to open those gates. And therefore, it grew specifically during that time period because the Kabbalists, being people of the heavens, who saw the heavens as they are, were able to know exactly which prayer would open which gate. And that's really what the assembly of the prayers is about when we open the prayer book and we see those prayers. They are keys to the gates of the heaven. So that's yet another element or dimension of prayer that we've been speaking about. And now focusing on this heart that is needed, we'll continue. Yes, please.
So I have a question, because I'm sorry I missed the process.
Please,
but
no problem.
so did prayers start after the sacrifices, or how is that connected?
Very good question. Right. So there were prayers that were always there before even the temple was built, even before the first Jerusalem temple was built, because they came from the Torah. God, for example, tells us to recite the Shema twice a day, right? When you wake up, when you go to sleep and when you get up. So the Shema prayer was always there. And there were other prayers that were always there, like Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after, the grace after the meal, that we have to say after we eat bread. That was always there. That's also a biblical. That's in the Torah, right? That's the core of the Torah. If you ate and you were satisfied, then you have to bless. So there are prayers that were always there because they are biblically rooted. But many prayers are rabbinically rooted. And those prayers that are rabbinically rooted really began after, or were composed after the destruction of the temple, when we couldn't have that connection through sacrifice. So to maintain that connection, we maintained it through prayers. And the rabbis told us exactly which prayers would substitute which sacrifice. And that's really where the origin of the more modern or more recent prayers are from.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's continue where we left off. It really speaks of yet another idea, and I really do want to get to the text, but this idea that prayer also is combines two other elements besides the heart and the structure, as we said. It also combines the prayer or the element of the individual and the element of the communal. And we spoke about how the communal prayer, and that's why this great emphasis to pray specifically within the context of our communities, because a communal prayer is a prayer that pierces through the heavens, that because of the weight of the community is on it, God listens to it, whether we deserve to be listened to or not. On the other hand, we can't lose ourselves in the community. We actually have to find ourselves in the community. It's almost like a symphony, as we've mentioned many times, that the power of the symphony is indeed the community coming together to play, but they also play different instruments. Everyone has their own different instruments, right? Elizabeth is a pianist, knows very well what I'm speaking about, but that's the nature of prayer. At the same time that we are in the community and we know that this weight of the community pierces the heavens, we also have to find our individual voice and have to include our individual offers also. That is also why we said there are moments in the prayer in which we're encouraged to speak for ourselves, not to speak the words of the community, but to speak the words of our hearts to God. For example, in the Shema Kolenu, which is one of the 19 blessings of the Amidah prayer, in which we ask God, hear our voice, Shema Kolenu, listen to our voice. There we are encouraged to add an individual prayer by mentioning whatever is on our heart individually. So we have to find ourselves in the community, not lose ourselves in the community. But that's the other idea of prayer. And this is now the thread that he continues to sow for us here on page 132. Let's continue. As you mentioned, does anyone want to read?
I'll read.
Thank you.
The
Thank you, Mark.
structure of prayer, the text, the set times, and the other attendant rules.
But
No.
Yeah.
the request-
so there is a request, middle of page 132. Yeah.
I am so sorry.
Mm.
I just was.
No.
I was rushing.
No, you were finding your individual voice. That's good. That's what we were speaking
Okay,
about.
there's a request for knowledge and there is a request for sustenance and a request for healing. Sometimes a person needs knowledge, but does not need rain. Sometimes one needs neither rain nor knowledge, but needs help. But because the text of the prayer is general, it contains many requests among them. The individual does not pray only for himself, but also for others and for the community. In a profounder sense, there is no dividing line between them. The community incorporates the individual, and the totality of the Jewish people is incorporated within each person.
Right, which is a very powerful idea, because it is really rooted in our very essence. I know we live in an individualistic world where the individual must be praised and everyone has the right to their own feelings, to their own ideas, everyone and their individuality is celebrated. But Judaism teaches that yes, we are individual beings, but at the very same time, we are also collective beings. This is why when God created Adam and Eve, he created them together, stuck together. Afterwards, he separated them. But according to the Midrash, they were created back to back to share with us also many messages, but also this message that dare we not think that we live as individuals only. Within our individuality, we must find the other. And if we haven't found the other in our individuality, then really we are lacking, that we are not complete human beings. The only way to become complete is to connect to the other. If we haven't connected to the other, then we are incomplete human beings. This is also why, if you think about this, in every milestone celebrated in Judaism, we evoke the other. Why? Because dare we not sink in our own little individual bubble and our own little individual joy. So for example, under the chuppah, we break a cup. Why do we break a cup under the chuppah? Why does the group slam this cup? So we say what?
Remember suffering.
Right, to remember the pain of the world, and at the same time also the fact that Jerusalem is not yet rebuilt. That's why he also says, before he breaks the cup, that verse from Psalms that speaks of the rebuilding of Jerusalem. But why? Let the guy enjoy himself. Why evoke sadness? Why, especially in a time of such joy? But that's really because we believe that we can only be complete, and therefore our joy can only be complete if we are reminded of the other and the world, that we not sink in our own selfish needs and selfish joys. And that's really the message of Judaism, because in essence, we are made of two. We are duplicates. There's not just one person. There's me and the other. That is also why this idea was conveyed so powerfully by when God wanted to count the Jewish people in the desert. He asked, we read that in the portion of Kitisa, it's coming up in like a month or two, something like that. But he asks Moses to count the Jewish people, not by counting them by bodies, 1, 2, 3. That's also why one is not allowed to count any type of group by saying 1, 2, 3, because the value of a person is not his or her body. The value of the person is in how he or she can connect to the other. How do we see that? So when God asks Moses to count the Jewish people, he says to them, collect from each and every one of them a half a shekel. Now, and then the assembly of all these half shekels would be donated to build the tabernacle in the desert. The question is, why ask them to donate a half a shekel? Fine, you want to count them? First of all, it will be easier mathematically, make it simpler to ask, and it will make the tabernacle also maybe more beautiful because you'll have more money to ask everyone to give 1 shekel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of counting halves. Why ask them to count, to give half a shekel to be counted? And the deeper idea is because what God was trying to tell Moses is that they should know that if they stand alone, they're only worth half. But if their half joins someone else's half, then they become one. Then they are truly wholesome. In Judaism, that's really the way we view ourselves. When we look at ourselves in the mirror, we should only see half a person. You know how we can complete ourselves throughout the day? If we join ourselves with someone else, if we kind to someone else, if we impact the world with someone else, or for someone else. Because otherwise we remain incomplete. Half a shekel must join that half a shekel that we are, must join another half shekel to become one. That's really the idea. And I think, by the way, it's been inculcated in the Jewish mind for generations. That is why also, I think, if you ask someone in the street, how many Jews are there in the world today? You know what they'll tell you? 100 million, 200 million, a billion. Why? Because, but really, how many Jews are there, by the way? 13 million, 14 million? There's a great American author by the name of David Himmelfarb who says that the number of Jews in the world is less than the statistical error in the Chinese census.
Wow.
That's how he puts it, which is true. There are 13, 14 million Jews in the world. But if you, again, ask people how many, there's millions, hundreds of millions. Why? Because we've always understood that we're only complete if we impact the world. And that's why you see Jews impacting the world for the good, unfortunately for the bad, in incredible ways and in horrific ways. Like the Bernie Madoffs of the world, or the recent FTX collapse of the cryptocurrency. It's also unfortunately a Jew. But not to talk negatively about anyone, but I'm just saying we have that idea inculcated in us, even subconsciously, that we are only wholesome if we impact the world, if we join ourselves with another. Now, how we join ourselves, it's a different story. We have to join ourselves and impact the other positively. But that's the way it is. That's why also going to the Jewish homeland, Midrash points out something quite beautiful, and that is that there are 2 seas that really belong to Israel. And you have the Mediterranean Sea, but that's shared with other countries. The seas that are in Israel is the Sea of Galilee in the north, and the sea in the south, which is called
The Red Sea.
the Dead.
I mean,
No,
Dead
the Red Sea also is shared with others.
No, I'm
The
sorry.
Dead Sea, right? Dead Sea, Yam HaMelach.
Sorry.
But it's also called the Dead Sea.
Right.
Now, why is it called the Dead Sea?
Because it's so salty that nothing moves.
Because everything
Okay.
dies.
So the Midrash says it's called the Dead Sea because it only receives, it doesn't give. The sea up north receives and gives, but you're really dead if you only receive and you don't give.
Does the Dead Sea not give? No.
Well, that gives salt. Now we found also it gives mud, Ava product. It gives only Jews can turn mud into gold. But yeah, yes, Daddy.
So since you brought it up,
Hmm?
Sam Bankman-Fried,
Hmm.
you know, when we talked last time, when we spoke about going big,
Yeah,
that's what I thought about relative to what are the constraints, what are the boundaries, or are there none? You
Mm.
just always go big because, you know, Bankman-Fried or Madoff,
Right.
you know, but we get big black eyes from those.
That's
guys,
right.
And there's a multiplier effect, right?
mhm.
So I'm just curious.
Unfortunately, you're right. And not only is there multiplier effect, but I've always believed that we are it's quite amazing, but we are representative of Judaism, right? Whether you wear a kippah or you don't, whether you act like a Jew or you don't, people will see you and will see Judaism. Fortunately, when these people mess up, it reflects, like you said, the multiplier, it reflects on everybody. The other side of it is that I think that, Albert Einsteins of the world and the good people are also reflect on everybody in a positive way. So we have to think about this, right? Absolutely. But the whole idea, again, it goes back to this, that we have known from the beginning of times, and it's been infused in our conscious and subconscious, that we're only wholesome if we join with someone else. And that's really the power of prayer. Prayer has to be joined with the prayer of the community, and that's why there is no prayer in the Amidah, which is the most important prayer, the most intimate prayer, that is in the singular tense. All of those blessings are in the plural tense, right? When we ask for, what do you say here? For wisdom, for knowledge, or for health, or for rain, we ask in the plural tense. We say, we use the word nu, or we say, for example, if we ask for health. Heal us. It's always an us. There is no real I in Judaism. That's why, by the way, if you think about this, let's take this a step further, just another idea, and I don't want to be monologuing here, but when Moses is asked to go and lead the Jewish people out of Egypt, right, is somewhere in Ethiopia, apparently, and God appears to him through a burning bush. And Moses at first refuses. Remember that biblical scene? God says, you're the one. He says, no, go find someone else. And at one point, Moses says to God, well, I'm not the leader because who am I? Now, what's interesting, all the questions that Moses asked God, God answered. When when Moses asked God, who am I? God doesn't answer that question. Who am I? Do you know why? Because Moses could only be a true I if you actually did go to Egypt, if he actually did join his himself, his deeper self, to the destiny of the nation. God was almost telling him, I'm not answering this. You'll discover that when you go there. When you join yourself with someone else, that's when you discover your true self. And I think that's one of the great maladies of society, if we had to really actualize this idea. But I think that we spend so much time over analyzing ourselves. Me, and how I feel, and my purpose. Everyone is to me. Even in the technology, you have iPods and iPhones. It's all about I, right? And even the Wii. Do you know about the Wii?
No.
What kids played?
Yeah.
Even the Wii, I think, finally someone got it right. Even the Wii is spelled with two I's. W-E-I-I. The only one that maybe got it right is YouTube, where finally you have someone focusing on the youth. But that's the and then no wonder we have such a crisis in mental health and in so many other fields, because we over focus on the I instead really of focusing on the you towards the other, but not you towards you, not you versus you, but your duty towards the other. And that's what prayer is all about. And that's why, by the way, I think that when you start the day and you continue on the day, because there are 3 prayers during the day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one in the evening. When you start the day, and then in the middle of the day, you find yourself all overcome with all sorts of daily challenges, but then you go and connect the community again. And then in the evening, when you're about to go to sleep, when you may have had a tough day, and you're facing a new day the following day, and you join yourself again with community, that's when we can really find strength, because we know that our strength lies in our ability to join ourselves with the other. So we find that strength in the morning, we find that strength again in the afternoon, find that strength again in the evening. Then a person can truly face the challenges of the day and become that light that we are all meant to become. Okay, so that's the big idea here from this little paragraph. You can continue, but I do want to hear your comments, your disagreements, your ideas, your thoughts, because it shouldn't be a monologue.
I have a question. Do you think
Yes.
we're incomplete at the soul level or incomplete at the prayer level?
I think at the soul level, it goes deeper than the prayer. At the very soul level, because as mentioned, we were created together with someone else. not as individuals. So the very source of our creation is incomplete if we only focus on the I.
Would it be just the physical that we created in two souls, or do you think there was one soul?
That's a good question. There is one soul, one soul. That's true, especially marriage, right? There's one soul. But it's not just in marriage. The author of the Tanya in chapter 32 speaks of that one soul. And that is that he asks the question of the most important commandment in the Torah is to love your fellow as yourself. Leviticus 19:18. Rabbi Akiva stated that this is the biggest rule in the Torah, the most important rule in the Torah. So, question he asks, a good question. How can you come to love someone else? First of all, how can you command love on someone else? I don't like someone, I don't like you. You're not going to force me to like you. If I don't like you, I don't like you. You're different. I'm not going to can respect you, but I'm not going to like you. So how can you force someone to love someone else? That's a bizarre command, and make this the most important rule in the whole Torah. And the answer of the Tanya is just so beautiful. It says, yes, you're right. You can't force someone to like someone else's body and the bodily features and the bodily symptoms and the bodily ideas. But you can't force someone else to love someone else's soul. Do you know why? Because that soul of someone else is yours. You all come, we all come from the same soul, to quote the Tanya. We all come from the same soul. It's just that the bodies are divided, but the soul is one. That's the words of the Tanya. So in essence, it's not just in marriage, but in essence, we all do come from the same soul. So there's division really in the soul aspect, not just in the prayer aspect if someone is.
So I'm a little confused. So
Yes, please.
So the soul, like my soul is really not my soul? I mean, I don't.
It is your soul, but it's one with the other. It's like.
So my soul,
like-
and Gila's soul is the same soul.
Mhm.
We're part of one.
Maybe a metaphor for this is the sun. So the sun has different rays. And maybe even different sides and different colors, depending on the time of the day. But eventually all the rays are rooted into one ball of fire. And that's really what souls are.
Would you say that this is the basis of morality?
I haven't thought about it too much to say that very strong statement, but I would say that my instinct would say yes.
Because my soul is connected to your soul. Therefore, if I treat myself with dignity, as Kant would say, I need to treat you with dignity. And therefore, how I treat myself or would treat myself is basically how I should be judging my moral actions.
Very good.
So what happens if you know somebody that you don't like? There is one person on the face of the earth that I know at CBT that I don't, no, I'm kidding. And it's that direct. And nobody in this room. But no, seriously.
No,
so-
yeah, that's a good point. Look, I don't know that could happen, by the way. Ready? You could dislike someone.
Me?
Yeah, Rabbi Steinsaltz once gave a talk on liking the people we love. Yeah, but anyhow, but I think that the only real way, which is the basis of morality, the more I think about it, the only real way to love people is to focus not that on that which divides us, which is the body, but on that which unites us, which is the soul. Their soul is the same as my soul. Now, sometimes, yes, you're right. Souls are covered with all sorts of filth. But if you're able to remove the filth, just like digging a well, if you're able to dig and dig and dig and dig, you'll find that well eventually. You'll find that diamond eventually. But focus on that diamond. Don't focus on the dirt that covers it up.
I think it's not even for them, it's for you to focus. Let's say you have an enemy that you despise. If you focus, it doesn't hurt them, it hurts you. So when I think of them, I just say I'm sending them love.
Very good.
Just because it impacts me. It has nothing to do with them, right? They can't see, but you're feeling.
Right.
Essentially, we're hurting ourselves, right? When we.
Wow.
No, you're right. And I think that's a beautiful way to deal with it. You fight hatred with love. But I will even say that why does that work? Let's dig deeper. Because where does love come from? Love comes from the soul. So when you respond to that which comes from the body, hatred, with that which comes from the soul, when the body and the soul fight and they're cognizant of that fight, the soul always wins. The soul is divine and the body is, the soul is infinite, the body is finite. Soul always wins. It wins with us. After 120, we die. So the body lost, but the soul won because the soul is everlasting. And when you answer hatred with love, you're actually using your soul to fight a bodily symptom. So that's why it wins. That's why.
There's a saying about what comes from the heart goes somewhere.
Right. That's right.
What is it?
So dvarim hayotzim min halev nichnasim el halev in Hebrew. That which comes from the heart enters the heart.
Yes.
That's what the Midrash says. I think it's the Midrash of Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which is very apropos. But the Song of Songs is a very romantic book, full of love. But Rabbi Meir of Premishlan, just to put a twist on this, who was a great Hasidic master about 200 years ago, says, look, let's listen carefully to that line. The words that come from the heart enter the heart, but it doesn't say whose heart they enter. Rabbi Meir of Premishlan says, you know whose heart they enter? Your heart. When you say things from the heart, eventually you stop believing in them. They enter your heart. Sometimes they'll enter the heart of the other, but they enter your heart.
You do.
Anyhow.
Rabbi, there's a really simple practice that I don't want to bring any clinical stuff.
No,
into there,
please,
but
please, yeah.
So let's say for a moment that I tell you guys, I am so cold right now. I'm freezing right now. I'm really, really cold. The response from many of you might be, you know, it's really warm in here. I mean, I don't feel cold, I feel warm.
Mhm.
If you said to me, you feel cold, really, if you could focus not on the I for the moment and say, oh, you feel cold, and look at me like, is there a problem? Is there something I can do? Maybe you're not feeling well. So often when somebody says, really tired, I didn't sleep well last night, the person, yeah, me too, or I, and then it's immediately their story.
Mhm.
But if you can focus for just a couple of seconds even on their story, you didn't sleep last night, I'm sorry to hear that, long enough, because there's this inclination to jump in
Right,
with our own.
right, very good.
Part of that is a useful exercise.
Yeah,
What if we keep hearing it all over it? What if they always are negative?
No, that's bad. If they're always, so. here's an
Like
example.
that.
What would be an
Right.
example?
of someone who's constantly negative,
Yeah.
chronic complainers, that's the, yeah.
You would offer
So-
empathy, but you wouldn't
Right,
you wouldn't allow them to contaminate your soul. You would tell them your soul, you know. You would,
Right.
you know, it's hard, it's very hard, if it's persistent and if it's mental illness, it's even
Right.
harder because you need to help them
right.
if you can.
Right.
but Not always.
Yeah. Look, and at the end of the day, also, you know, the ultimate cure has to come from within. So those people have to cure themselves from within. But what we can do is be like gardeners. That's the other example that's used in the Talmud. That when a gardener faces a tree that is dry and dead in the winter, does it give up on the tree? No, because it knows that it's storing energy within. Right? The whole process of photosynthesis, of photosynthesia, as they call it in Hebrew. There's a process that happens in the winter, but one may look at the tree and say, oh, well, the tree's dead, I'm going to give up on it. So it doesn't mean that on the other, yes, change has to come from within, but it doesn't mean we have to give up on those people either. We have to be those waterers, recognizing that they're going through a process, but we have to keep loving and keep watering that tree. And eventually the tree will blossom.
Rabbi, do you, this is
Yeah.
a hard question, but do you believe that people like burning their head off and like the young man who's gotten into so much trouble, the young Jewish man? How should we view them?
I think we should view them with compassion. I think we should view them with not
when you lost so much money.
not when you lost so much money, but look, these guys were, like you said, were overcome by all sorts of things. I don't know. I don't think we can judge people altogether, especially people who have not affected us, who we read about in the news. So what? If the news judges them, doesn't mean we have to judge them. We're so impacted by that. Rabbi Steinsaltz would say that nothing in the newspaper is true. Even the date on the newspaper is not true because it was printed the night before. So, so nothing in the newspaper. It's true. So it doesn't mean it has to impact us. We do have to have compassion on them. We have to hope that they can do teshuvah, that they can truly repent. And, but again, we have to believe that even though the tree is dead and dry, it still has some life force that can bring it.
Rabbi,
Yeah, so and therefore,
Everybody said, I hope he's not Jewish.
right. I turned out to be Jewish. Yeah, we're responsible for each other. That's why the problem is this: if we really are, we never go to the root of it, and the root of it is that how does Bernie Madoff come to be? Because really, it started years before. It didn't just one day appear as Bernie Madoff. I stole what is it, $50 billion, whatever it was. Bernie Madoff was a Bernie Madoff in the works for decades, and I think that if we had started to love him and to really water him, especially those who knew him, then maybe the Bernie Madoff, the monster that he became, would not have become that monster. And I think this really should encourage each and every one of us to nurture our surroundings, the people that we do know, as much as we can, because you never know where that tree can grow. And before it becomes a monster, let's make sure that we channel the forces of those people that we do know in the right direction. They become blessings to the world and not curses. So really, that's the root of it all. And that's where it should begin. And that's why I think where we treat our children is the most important, because that's where the great potentials can take one way or the other, unfortunately.
I have
So,
a question about
yeah.
the soul. I don't know if it's related, but it's just so powerful. Soul by itself, we were created from the image of God. God gives us part of his being and give us a soul. And when we are dead, we go back to that. So to be more perfect. So how does soul, it's such a, if we're here coming from the image of God and we're created by him, why there is so many different kind of souls? Why there is evil? Why there is good in this world? It's all, we're coming from a pure soul.
Right, because the world gets the better of us. That's the bottom line.
So it's just,
the world gets the better of us and we start thinking less of ourselves. In the previous class, just to develop this idea in the happiness hour, we shared the story that Rabbi Steinsaltz would share. But I remember him sharing it in 1995 to Soviet Union Jews who had just immigrated from the Soviet Union. And of course, they were so demoralized for so many years, right? On all levels, Jewishly and humanly, because they lived under the Soviet dictatorship. And finally, 1991, the Iron Curtain fell. 1989, 91, right? 1991, the Iron Curtain finally fell, and these Jews started to there was the second grand exodus, not from Egypt, but from the Soviet Union. Anyway, Rabbi Steinsaltz was one of the first people to attend to Russian Jewry. 1986 already. He went into Russia, infiltrated into Russia as a scientist, and he created a whole organization to attend to those Jews. But so he kept a very strong contact. He was also named the spiritual leader of Russia by Gorbachev. And eventually he had schools in Russia and so on. So he knew Russian Jews quite well. In 1995, I was with him in a class that he was giving to Soviet Jews. And he shared with him the story of the eagle. It's just a beautiful, cute story that I'm going to share again, even though I know some of you have heard it in the previous class. But story of the eagle, story of an eagle who came to give birth, to have eggs, and in this big nest that the eagle had created for itself on top of a tree. Unfortunately, the nest wasn't big enough for all the eggs that this eagle was having. So one of the eggs dropped and went downstairs. It went to the bottom of the tree. And eventually this egg hatched. And then when the egg hatched, it was looking for its family. But the family was up on the tree, so it didn't find its family. And the only birds that were next to him were a group of ducks. So he said to himself, wow, this must be my family. So he went and he joined these ducks. But it never clicked for him because these ducks started judging him. On the other hand, he said, well, you're my family. And he wanted to make a point that they are his family, because that's where he felt the sense of belonging. So he started to behave like a duck. And slowly but surely, not only behaved like a duck, but he walked like a duck. And he talked like a duck. And if you walk like a duck and you talk like a duck, you must be a duck. And then, but he was never really fully accepted. And one day he says to himself, let me look heavenwards. And he looks heavenward and he sees an eagle soaring. He says to himself, whoa, that bird looks much more like me than these ducks look like me. I wonder if I may be part of that family instead of this family. And from day to day, he would go and look heavenwards and we see more and more eagles. And he started believing this must be my family, not this. And he said, I wonder if I have wings like them. And he found out that he has wings like them. He says, I wonder if I can fly like them. He found out he can fly like them. You know, if I can soar to the heavens, like, so I wonder if I have a good eyesight. Like, I have a good eyesight like them. And he started using those wings and soaring to the heavens and joining his real family. And his real family, of course, embraced him. Oh, thank you, a long lost eagle. It says that's the story of the Jewish spirit, or the Jews, especially you, came out of the Soviet Union. For years and years and years, they've told you that you are ducks. And you behave like ducks and you talk like ducks, but we don't fault you for that, because that's the only people that you saw. But you are eagles. You know, you can find that out if you look towards the heaven from time to time. Look, every day, look towards the heavens and remember, that's who you are. You come from there. You are heavenly beings. You are divine. And you'll see all of a sudden that you can start flying like the eagles. You can start soaring to the heavens like the eagle. You can start seeing things like the eagles. That's what you have to do from now on. But that's what he was telling that group of Soviet Jews. But it's so true, because who was asking the question? What do people become like? Oh, Jackie, you were asking that question. Because the world gets the better of us. Unfortunately, we forget that we are heavenly beings. We start thinking we're ducks. But really, we are eagles. Okay.
But on the other hand, if you know, I had one of my lessons before, it was a Jewish couple, but the wife was not married. She was raising her kids as Jewish. So she was. We were talking about she's a Jew. She thinks she's a Jew. So her husband said, well, if she looks like a pig, act like a pig, eat like
God
a pig,
forbid.
she must be a Jew.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's how they looked at it, and they were very upset with other people in the class, because we didn't invent the law. This is the law of Moses. So this is also another way of looking at it.
Right. Well, I can tell you that pigs, the Talmud says that pigs will become kosher when Mashiach comes. Really. That's why pigs are called chazir in Hebrew, because the word chazir in Hebrew comes to return. That animal will be returned to us. Right? That's what the Talmud says.
There's a solution.
So it's not so bad after all. But no, it's a terrible way. But I think it's true for every human being too. We have an eagle side to us that unfortunately is not nurtured enough. And we have to ensure that it soars to the heavens. Okay. And that's what prayer does. Okay, going back, when we see ourselves only as eyes, only as individuals, then really that's when we see ourselves as ducks. When we can see ourselves as much more than just the eye. It's people who have the ability to impact the world and therefore must join others. That's when we see ourselves as eagles. And that's really what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here.
I was just thinking about Idul. So men and women pray the same. We do the same prayers.
Right.
And it's not like for woman or man. It's all the same.
Right.
Never thought of it.
Yeah.
And I've been coming.
On the other hand, we pray, and that's the deeper reason for mechitza. As we come together, there's that partition, right, that we have here. Many people don't like, unfortunately, but the reason is really profound. First, the technical reason. No, I shouldn't say that. The technical reason some rabbis say is because during the rabbi's sermon, everyone falls asleep, and we don't want men and women falling asleep together. That's the technical. But the deeper reason is really because men and women have different energies, and we want these energies really to be well guided and condensed and zoomed, laser zoomed, so to speak. So therefore, we have this partition. But you're right, the prayers are the same. Because again, the prayer is We have to find our individual voice in the prayer, but the prayer is not just for me. The prayer is for us, right? Rafa'einu, Hashiveinu, Shema Koleinu, we say, us.
What about modern needs for the men?
Yeah, but that's when you wake up in the morning.
But
That's
modern, but it's modern.
No, the women say modane.
Yeah, but it's the same prayer. You're right. It's the exact same prayer. That's just a grammatical thing. But that's when you wake up in the morning. You have to see first of all, before you even start the day and join. That's when you say, okay, this is the soul. I define myself as a soul. By the way, that's what you say. It's a prayer of gratitude where you define yourself as a soul. Shechazarta bi nishmati. Right? You define yourself as a soul. By the way, that's what we do. That's the exercise of the morning. It doesn't just stop there. But if you go further down, there's one of the most beautiful, exquisite, and mystical and soulful prayers in the prayer book, is a prayer that comes 3 prayers after that. Modani, you say in Tilat Yadayim, then you say Asher Yatzar, and then there's the prayer of what's called Elokai Neshama. Shenatata bi teorai. God, the soul that you gave me is pure. You formed it, you created it, you fashioned it, and you will, and you will take it away from me at one day. I don't know when that will happen. You'll take it away from me, but you will also return it to me. And when Mashiach will come, the resurrection of the dead. But we speak again of the soul, because exercise in the morning is to define ourselves as eagles, as souls. And when you define yourselves as souls, that's when you can face the world and then really make that impact, not having the world overcome you. Reminds me of the story of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, B'shnias of blessed memory, who as a child was playing in a local park. He too was from the Soviet Union, but he never let the Soviet Union really get to him in any shape or form. But he was playing in a park, and in that park, he had friends that were playing this game of who can climb to the highest peak of the tree. And he decided to partake in the game. And he started to climb too. And very quickly, he reached the highest peak. People were stunned. Why? How did you reach that highest peak? No one did that before you. So his mother asked him, how come you won? And he said, it's very simple. When I saw my friends climbing, I saw that at one point or another, they looked down. And when they looked down, they were so overcome with fear that they decided to quit the game. I said to myself, when I'm going to climb that tree, I'll never look down. And he never looked down, always looked up. And then his mother, and this became a Yiddish saying among the Hasidic circles, his mother from that story coined this phrase that when you connected above, you cannot fall below. When you connected above, you cannot fall below. I wish I knew the Yiddish. When you connected above, you cannot fall below. And that's really what we're doing in the morning. And that's what this is all about. We are souls that are connected above. We are eagles. We come from the heavens and we are heavens. And then you can't fall below.